Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This is all my video game pickups for the month of March 2020, which, strange month, and not for the usual reasons, like, oh, I went to this and that, and I got this and that, but no, this one was weird because of, well, obviously the whole CV situation that has got everybody inside. Because of that, pickups were obviously affected just like everything else in the world. And I do want to say this, a bunch of people have been asking, like, why do you call it CV instead of the actual name or any of the actual names? And the answer to that question is YouTube doesn't really allow us to do that. Not in the sense of, like, you are not allowed to say this, but more like you're not allowed to talk about it without punishment. Not for like nefarious reasons, but as I understand it, if you refer to it by its actual name, there's a high probability your video will be demonetized. And the reason they do that is not so much like, hey, don't talk about it, the most obvious thing that all human beings in the world are talking about, but because they don't want to incentivize people to do crappy things. Let's face it, human beings do that. So you don't want to monetize and reward people for making like an obvious fake video about, like, I cured CV at home with just home remedies. Click here to find out how, or whatever. You want to make sure people aren't doing that, but their algorithm is not advanced enough to be able to discern the difference, so it's just kind of a blanket approach to the entire statement. So when I say CV, you know what I'm talking about. Now, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys are staying safe in all this weirdness. Just wash your hands and keep clean and do your social distancing, whatever. But enough of that. Let's talk about video games. That's what we're here for. Now, because of all that, though, I have to admit it did affect pickups because you can't really go out. All events and stuff like that are canceled. But that said, I still ended up with some stuff, mostly due to things that happened beforehand. So let's talk about them. Got a whole bunch of adapters and converters and scalers, if you will. Not really necessarily all accurate terms, but I got a bunch of stuff that I thought you guys would like to see. The guys who make the Pound cable, they sent me one for the Sega Saturn. Now, they actually sent this to me a little while ago, but I ended up using it. If you guys saw it, I did a video with Ben Heck where we repaired the Sega Pluto, or more accurately, Ben repaired the Sega Pluto. I do want to talk a little bit about that because that video got a little screwed up because it's supposed to be a two-part video. Like, one part was his and the other was mine. His video came out, you might have noticed mine did not. There's a very specific reason for that. My video was supposed to conclude by going to San Francisco and doing extensive testing on the console. Like, you know, he kind of alludes to some of it in the video where he's talking about, like, I wonder if the RAM is also in there, and I wonder if it supports this. And I was going to do a bunch of that in San Francisco in a test suite. But that got kind of screwed up because of the situation that we're all in right now. So unfortunately, Ben didn't really want to wait any longer to put his half of the video out. So his half is out, but there will be at some point a conclusion to that with more information. But at least at this point in time, no, the hard drive in it still doesn't do anything. But the reason I'm bringing all that up is in that video, this cable was used. Not because of any other reason than we wanted to test RGB capabilities, but we did, Ben didn't have the infrastructure to do all that. He doesn't have FrameMeisters, he doesn't have any of that kind of stuff. So the quickest and most efficient way was just to grab one of these, plug it in, and just see if it worked. Because if it did, you knew that at the very least it had RGB capability. That said, I'm still getting people giving me crap for it in the comments, but whatever. Point is, got one of these from Pound. It does support RGB, and cool, the Pluto supports RGB. So thank you very much, Pound, for sending that my way. But they weren't the only ones to do so. There's a company called Kaiko. I think that's how you pronounce it. These guys are based in the UK, and they sent me a big package full of a ton of stuff. And I thought I would take a second to show each item to you and just kind of, I used some of them just to kind of get a sense of them. And you guys tell me, along with the Pound cable, if any of this stuff you're thinking like, hey, that would be a good video, I want to see that, I want more information, let me know. I'm sure I could do it. So let's take a look here. The first one up here is the Sega Dreamcast one, of course, my favorite console of all time. This one in particular, I don't really have high expectations for, to be honest with you. I assume that this will be basically the equivalency of the Pound version 2 cable, or it'll be like the same as the Hyperkin cable. I don't know, I haven't really used this one extensively. What I would like to believe is that they matched the Bahar Bros VGA HDMI adapter for the Dreamcast. That thing was the best one, that's the gold standard. Unfortunately, the Gecko, as it was known, has since been discontinued. If this thing was as good as the Gecko, then it'd be great to be able to recommend it to people, but I haven't done that test. The problem with the ones like by Pound and by Hyperkin is that they just they had flaws, and the video quality out of them wasn't quite as good as what the Gecko was offering you. Wasn't a huge difference. Kind of was with the version 1 cable. But this one, I don't know yet. But I'm assuming it's probably the same guts. Don't know for sure. That said, there's a few others. We got the this one was interesting because it's a prototype, or it was. I think this has a wide release now. This is for the OG Xbox. This one I actually did some testing on, and interestingly, this one is basically exactly the same as the pound cable. So I rigged this up versus the pound cable, and I was looking for like screen tearing because the pound cable does some screen tearing. Whereas the Hyperkin cable was somehow did screen tearing and was kind of like a duller image. So between the two, the pound cable was a better one. This one I was hoping could be that solution. It could be that thing that was better than the pound cable, because to be honest, the OG Xbox has yet to have like a really good HDMI solution. So I had high hopes for this. But it turns out it's essentially exactly the same as the pound one. I really didn't notice any difference, at least in preliminary tests. So I assume it's probably the same in the final production unit. But there you go. There you go. Now, the other two that they sent here, we got the PlayStation 2 cable. This one is interesting. It seems unique to me. Versus the pound cable, it definitely has some differences. I don't think I ever tested the Hyperkin one of these, but the pound one was... The pound one was strange because the PS2, like just to keep it real with you, the PS2 has horrific video output. We're not talking about graphics, we're talking about not even resolution capabilities. The problem there, though, was that the PS2 rarely used them. But as far as image clarity goes, it was very fuzzy, and it just offers you a bad picture all around. So, and it was just a complicated console in that regard, but at the same time, a very popular console, so naturally people still want to play it. And they want to connect it to their modern television, they want it to look good. Unfortunately, you're never going to get that, but what you can get is doing a bunch of things to make it look less bad. In my opinion, the best way to hook up the PS2 is to use HD Retrovision component cables, connect them to a RetroTink 2X, activate the smoothing, connect that to an M Classic, and there you go. That's probably the best you're ever going to see the PlayStation 2 look off of original hardware without, you know, like installing the HDMI boards and all that stuff. So how does this thing compare? Well, the thing is, the pound cable that already came out, their method to solving some of the problems that the PS2 has was that they built a scaler in that auto-forced anything it detected, which was generally 480i, into 720p, which sounds good, but really it was just kind of blowing up the image, which stretched the image, and it didn't look natural or correct. It just worked, and it would be acceptable for the average customer. It was actually pretty good for PS1 games, but for PS2, not so much. The reason for that is the PS2 has two video output modes in the settings you have to adjust, either RGB mode or YPBPR component mode. And the problem with RGB mode is that it's incapable of higher resolutions, and the problem with YPBPR mode is that it's incapable of playing PS1 games. So they went for the lesser of, in their opinion, two evils. So you went for the RGB mode, allowing the games to all support PS1, but if any game supported the high resolution modes of the PS2, you still couldn't use it. Hopefully you followed that. This cable is interesting because it actually has a switch on it that allows it to support both. Which means if there is a game on the PlayStation 2 that supports the high resolution modes, when, to be honest with you, there aren't many, there's like 180 out of the nearly 5,000 game library. Of those, if you found one, let's say Rule of Rose is a good example, that game supports 480p. It's one of the few games that do. If you run that game with the pound cable, it's not going to do anything. It's going to run in 480i, and the pound cable will upscale and do all that stuff. However, if you run it with this, you have the option to run it natively in 480p and then let this cable take over. So I'm actually rather interested in testing this one more extensively, because in addition to having the component capabilities, it also has the RGB capabilities, meaning you can still play PS1 games with it. Because the alternative is, if you make a component or an HDMI cable for the PS2 that only supports the component input support, you will not be able to play any PS1 games. That's the problem that actually the HD Retrovision cables run into. So, yeah, interesting. Now, next up, they sent me this. This is their HDMI adapter for the Gamecube. This one, this is a straight clone of the Kirby and GCHD. Like, those are all basically using exactly the same guts, and then they just have like slightly different features here and there just to make them different. In this case, this one actually comes with a remote control that allows you to control the menu settings of the software. That way you can change the settings more easily, whereas things like the Kirby and I think it was the GCHD, while they have that, they don't come with a remote. You have to like find a universal remote and programming it accordingly. So they were less convenient. So that's this thing's big advantage, is it comes with that that remote control, allowing you to change those settings. And there's some pretty useful stuff in those settings. Aside from that, though, I can't imagine there's a single image quality difference. Possibly a build quality difference. I don't know. Again, haven't extensively tested it. But yeah, I'm guessing as far as image goes, it's exactly the same thing. So again, if you want to see more extensive videos on any of those, please feel free, let me know, and we'll decide what to do. The other thing they sent me was this. This is the OSSC. Now, astute viewers who have been watching me for a long time might know I already did a video on one of these. I did an OSSC video, I don't know how many years ago, maybe like 5 years ago at this point. That one, the problem with the OSSC that I had at the time, it was from the original manufacturer as opposed to this one, which is produced by Kaiko. The original version that I had only had DVI output as opposed to HDMI. Now, the problem with that I stated back then is that DVI is inconvenient. While it is technically the same video signal, it is also like more of an open source video signal, whereas you have to license HDMI to use it officially. And they didn't want to do that because they would have to pass the cost on to the customer, so it was trying to keep the cost down. It was very much an engineer's solution to a marketing problem, but it's not a consumer-grade compatible answer. And what that means is the average customer does not care that you solved that problem with an extra link cable they got to buy. They want to just plug it in and use it. So more or less, that was my feedback at the time. It's like, I get why you did this, but that's not helpful because you need to go out and buy these things. And eventually they changed it and they started using HDMI outputs, but I really didn't touch it since. Anyway, so Kaiko said, we'll send you like a newer one, and that's exactly what they did. Now, I don't know the details of this. It's my understanding that there's some sort of issue between those guys who did it originally and Kaiko. I have nothing to do with that. I don't know anything about it. I just know there's something there. So I can't possibly say what that is. But regardless, this is the thing I think of all of these I would be most likely to just sit down and make a new video on my own just because of the differences. But again, with this and with any of those, please give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. And if there's any in particular you're like, dude, I really want to see that one, let me know. I'd be very curious. They also I just think they just threw this in here, replacement shells for the OSSC. This one happens to be a blue one, so I have a blue one. So thank you very much, Kaiko. Moving on, though, we actually did get some games this month. Believe it or not, partially because of all this lockdown stuff, I've had more time on my hands, so I have been playing some video games. I know. One franchise I always kind of wanted to play but never really found the time to do so was Assassin's Creed. Now, I've played the later Assassin's Creed games, you know, in big chunks because I would do them at like Ubisoft events or whatever, but never really sat down and just played one from beginning to end, especially never starting all the way at the beginning. So I decided to play Assassin's Creed 1. And I was talking to a friend of mine at Ubisoft who was making jokes about how they predicted the Division, you know, Division predicted the new world we're going to live in, but talking all about all of what's going on. And then they sent me this. This is the Assassin's Creed Ezio collection for the Xbox One. This actually includes the remastered version of Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and Assassin's Creed Revelations. So thank you very much to buddies over at Ubisoft. But yeah, I've been, at the time I'm recording this, I'm still in the middle of Assassin's Creed 2. Good game. I'm liking it so far. You know, there's obviously a ton of Assassin's Creed games, and I'll see how far I go with it before I assume it'll kind of burn me out, but I'm also kind of stopping and playing other things and stopping and doing other things in general, just because you can't, in my opinion anyway, if you play a game like this and that's the only game you're playing, you're going to kind of burn yourself out on it, but maybe that's just me. One of the other franchises I was playing was, I decided to pick up, well, I had already, but I started to literally pick up and play Wolfenstein, the Bethesda new edition. And I really liked that game, and then I had Wolfenstein 2, but I also knew that there were some other ones. There was Wolfenstein the Old Blood, which I got right here. This was actually a prequel to Wolfenstein 1, and this is rare for me to say, but I have a game on this table for one of the few times where I can actually sit here and say, I beat this whole game already, and I can give you a micro review of it. But this was, like I said, a prequel to Wolfenstein 1, and I like this game just fine. It was a budget title when it came out, so it was even cheaper now. But yeah, the only thing I didn't like about this is you're playing along and you're doing what you're supposed to do, which is you're killing fascists. And you're taking them all down. Everything's the game as you accept the insane premise of like, hey, World War II is still going in 1946 and the Germans are winning. Like, that's the premise. And there's more to it than that, but yeah, that's what's happening. And fine. But this game, it goes from like accepting that premise to near the end of it, you're just like, what? Because out of nowhere, like, all of them turn into zombies, and you're just fighting zombies. And I was like, did we have to do that? I felt like going zombie route mid-game. Not even mid-game. I'd say like 70-80% of the way through the game. You just switch to zombies, and I was like, well, I couldn't do that again if I tried. Did you see that? Yeah. Anyway, no, I didn't like that aspect of it. But other than that, the game was fun. The other one, they had a new one out that I didn't even remember hearing about. I think this was announced at E3, but then I just totally forgot about it. Wolfenstein Youngblood Deluxe Edition. I imagine this game is not very good. I have not tried it at all. But the reason I think that is, this didn't come out that long ago. This is the Deluxe Edition, as in not even, there is a basic version of this game. And this one was like 14, 15 bucks, something like that, brand new. So I'm assuming this is really not very good, but I still got it anyway, and just kind of thinking like, oh, I'll see how far I get with it. At the moment, I'm playing Wolfenstein 2 though, so we'll see. I'm just gonna leave it like that because that's kind of cool. Another thing I got, which goes back quite some time, back in 2015. This might surprise you. I did the Kickstarter backer for Shenmue 3. I know, who would have seen that one coming? One of the things I did was I pledged to support not only the PS4 version, but the physical PC edition. The physical PC edition has actually shown up. Here it is. It's got its exclusive Kickstarter case as well as the actual game, which is backer exclusive edition, which has to be because there is no retail version of this for PC. As you guys probably know, I don't really play stuff on PC. I certainly don't collect anything for PC because there's not really much of a point in my opinion. But this is the only, by far, the only PC game I own physically right here. Shenmue 3. Keeping it sealed because there's really no point in opening it. I'm never going to use the PC version. And as far as I know, there is a disc in there, but the data isn't on the disc. It's just like an Epic launcher, and then you have to use the code that you already received digitally in order to redeem it. So it's just kind of it's literally just for a shelf. It's really only for the collectors, and that's exactly why I got it. So it's just there to be part of the Shenmue collection, but beyond that, nothing that special about it. But it's cool that it's actually here. And then the last thing is actually a package that came from Sweden. This comes from a guy named Grim, or at least that's the handle he's going by, so thank you very much, Grim. So what happened with this is that Grim contacted me a little while ago, kind of before all the CV stuff like truly went nuts, and he had seen my video from last month in which I had shown all this stuff I got at, like in St. Louis at a convention, Missouri Game Con Jr., and he saw that I had a Toshiba Nuon. Now, the Nuon was a very ill-fated, if you can even call it that, 6th-generation video game console. It was basically a series of DVD players that had extra hardware in them to play games specifically made for them. There were not very many games made available to that console. I happened to find one of them, the Toshiba variant, at the Missouri Game Con Jr., and I got it, but I said, I don't have anything for this. It's got the remote control, and that's it. Like, I don't have games, I don't have controllers, I've got nothing. And so he messaged me and he's like, yo, dude, I've got a few extra games if you want them. And I was like, you don't have to send me stuff. And he was like, come on, man. Like, there's nobody that has a Nuon. These are extra games. Just take them. And I was like, okay. So thank you very much, Grim. So let's open them up and actually see what kind of stuff actual games are inside. That ended up being harder to open than I expected. Okay. Anyway, so inside we've got packing material, a couple of game cases, and yeah. Okay, so that's it. That makes sense. All right. We got 2 games. We have Ballistic, and we have Freefall 3050 AD. I believe he said Ballistic was in a newer case. This was not the original way the case was released, but it does, yeah, it's the full game, as well as a little manual, an image of the controller, actually, which is interesting. Nuon DVD Interactive, I guess, is their official pitch for it. And obviously these are DVD-based technology games, which is cool. And let's see if the bottom of the disc looks special in anywhere. If it just looks, yeah, it just looks straight up like a DVD. It doesn't look any different. So there's that one, which is neat. And then Freefall. Oh, okay. So this was the original case. Freefall is in the PS2 case. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah. So there you go. Very cool. This one has a manual as well. Well, actually, the other one doesn't have a manual. It has like an insert. But good enough for me, considering they were very, you don't ever, this is the first time I've ever seen Nuon games, ever, in my life. I've never seen them on shelves before. I've never seen the option to buy them. I gather that they're more common in Europe, but I've never seen them there either. I honestly don't know. Yeah, it is, Ooh, and apparently Ballistic was pack-in only, not for individual commercial resale. So I guess there were certain versions of the Nuon that actually had this. I believe this is actually the most common game on the Nuon is Ballistic. But yeah, Tempest, was it Tempest 2000 is the rarest one because that's like the best one, or at least that's what I heard. But honestly, more than satisfied to have these because that's just cool to have anything for the Nuon. So thank you very much to Grim for doing that. Thank you very much to Ubisoft for hooking me up with a copy of Assassin's Creed. Thank you to Kaiko for all this stuff. Thank you to Pound for the cable. And thank you guys for watching. If you guys could please like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. There's a bunch of information in the description for social media and all that. Appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.